at University of Leeds. I will be your host for today's event. Just as a reminder, please note that this event will be recorded, so feel free to turn off your camera if you wish to do so. Just to give you all an idea of who Aspiring Barristers are as an organization, it is an organization centered around supporting aspiring student barristers from underrepresented groups within the profession with their journey towards the bar. The primary aim of Aspiring Barristers is twofold. Firstly, to introduce increased diversity initiatives across the profession to foster the development of enhanced diversity at the bar. Secondly, to further promote an ethos of increased accessibility to the bar, irrespective of personal characteristics, background, or means, so that the profession remains a serious option to all talented aspiring barristers. The organization provides a variety of initiatives, each designed to meet its primary aim. Some of these include the book club, seasonal essay competitions, mentoring schemes, mini pupillage schemes, networking and seminar series such as this one, and of course, the University Ambassadors Program. I'll repeat it again. As housekeeping rules, please make sure to mute yourself until the Q&A segment of tonight's event. We expect you all to follow this to ensure that the event runs smoothly. However, in the case that there are any disruptions, we may be required to remove the attendee from the Zoom meeting. I would now like to introduce our guest speakers for tonight's event. As we will now be discussing their respective journeys to the bar, I will make sure to keep the introduction short. This is to ensure that they may be able to share their professional backgrounds and non-traditional routes into the bar. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Stacey-Lee Holland. Since joining to Dr. Johnson's building chambers in May 2019, Stacey-Lee has established a busy criminal law practice. Having previously worked at the Crown Prosecution Service for 17 years, Stacey-Lee brings to chambers a wealth of experience in the field, which she has continued to develop, covering a broad spectrum of offenses, including serious violence, sexual offenses, drugs and weapons offenses. She also has extensive knowledge and experience of driving-related matters. Stacey-Lee both prosecutes and defends, and when defending, she's often chosen to represent clients with vulnerabilities due to her excellent client care and communication skills. In addition, she's often instructed in relation to applications under the Proceeds of Crime Act, sexual harm prevention orders, sexual risk orders, and stalking protection orders. She's also qualified to accept instructions under the Public Access Scheme. Welcome, Stacey-Lee. Next, we have Mukhtiar Singh. Mukhtiar is a barrister at Doughty Street Chambers and has been a constant source of guidance and support to aspiring barristers as an AB champion. Mukhtiar practices in employment and commercial law with a particular focus on senior manager and executive cases involving whistleblowing, discrimination, and business and commercial ethics. He works predominantly in 3 regulated sectors: financial services, healthcare, and the police. Mukhtiar's father came to the UK in the 1950s and worked as a labourer in London until retirement age. Mukhtiar had various part-time jobs during primary and secondary education, and then nearly 25 years full-time employment in the public sector since leaving school aged 16. Prior to successfully completing pupillage in October 2013, Mukhtiar completed his law degree and bar qualifications whilst working full-time and starting a family. Mukhtiar has a particular interest in social mobility at the bar and has set up the Guru Nanak Social Mobility Scholarship Scheme. He is a social mobility advocate as part of the Bar Council's #IamTheBar Social Mobility campaign. Welcome to you as well. Next up, we have Mark Robinson. Mark is a commercial barrister at Garden Court Chambers. Prior to his call to the bar, Mark established a busy practice as a freelance solicitor after he successfully completed his training contract with a leading East London criminal defense firm. Mark is regularly instructed for matters in the Crown Court and appears in the Court of Appeal. He is an experienced gangs practitioner and accepts instructions for serious youth offense and drug-related offenses. He also has experience representing youths and vulnerable adults with a variety of mental health and learning difficulties who require an intermediary. Mark previously assisted with the research of several commissioned reports, from Postcodes to Profit and the Lamy Review. He is keen to continue this important work and welcomes instructions for all public inquests and inquiries. Prior to coming to the bar, Mark was a presenter on BBC Radio 1 Extra and a professional DJ for many years. Mark continues to work with the BBC and was recently featured on the BBC Two documentary, How to Crack the Glass Ceiling, and previously appeared on BBC Radio 4's Law in Action. Mark also runs Lawyers at Large, a project that sees state school educated barristers invited into secondary schools and shares their non-traditional journey to the bar, running an advocacy skills and a mock trial competition for students to participate in. Welcome again, Mark. Last up, we've got David Tremain. David is a criminal barrister at 187 Chambers. David prosecutes and defends in the Crown Court, as well as appearing in the Magistrates and Youth Court, where he represents clients charged with a range of offences, from violence and sexual offences through to drugs, motoring, and public order offences. David has also conducted private prosecutions in licensing matters for 2 London boroughs and has carried out work for clients facing asset forfeiture and confiscation proceedings. Before coming to the bar to specialize in criminal practice, David completed the Teach First program and taught for 3 years in secondary schools in the Midlands and in Essex. Whilst completing the bar course, David achieved a successful settlement for a client in the Employment Tribunal and also represented children facing school exclusion before independent review panels. David also volunteered with Support Through Court, assisting litigants in person at the Family and County Court. Welcome, David. Once again, thank you to all our guest speakers for joining us this evening amidst their very busy practice. Without further ado, I shall now begin asking some questions to our speakers. This event will be split into 4 parts. Firstly, to discuss their professional background prior to entering the bar. Secondly, their journey into the bar. Thirdly, understanding their perspectives of having undertaken non-traditional pathways into the bar. And lastly, the most important bit, which is the Q&A segment, which is open to all attendees. Now to our first part, which is the background. I shall start with asking a question to all our panelists. To start and to create a picture for our viewers, could you please explain to our listeners your background and journey to the bar? Please could we start with Stacey, if that's okay.
Hi everybody, I am one of 6 children. I attended state school. My parents were on benefits at various times. I was on free school meals. I wasn't an easy child. I'm probably not an easy adult either. I didn't have an easy ride through school or thereafter, in fact. And when we come to talk about A-levels, I completely flunked my A-levels as a result of family issues. And when I say flunked, I mean literally fell. I was holding down 4 jobs at the time, had various family issues in the lead up to my exams. I did manage, with the support of one of my teachers, to get a university place in London through clearing. Despite the careers advisor telling me that I wasn't from the right class to be a barrister and that I wouldn't amount to anything as a result of my background. I went to university. I had severe eating disorders and I managed a year at university. I then fell pregnant with my daughter. I'd been with my husband since I was 13 years old, engaged at 18, married at 21. I chose between university and having a child who I never thought I would be able to have. And so I gave up university to be a mum. I therefore took a job as a paralegal with the CPS in 2001 and did that for a while. I did general crime and then I did a RASO unit as a paralegal. Then in 2007, I took the in-house exams to be an associate prosecutor, which is basically a magistrate's court prosecutor dealing with sentences, plea hearings, the basic stuff, but no trials. Then in 2013, whilst working and raising my children, of which I have two, and I will say with the support of my husband, because I have to give him his dues, and he has really been there for me when I changed my career, and it's not easy. I then went back to study in 2013. So working, being a mum and studying at the same time. I don't actually have a degree, which is really odd and very unusual. I got a certificate of academic standing because of the 18 years that I'd served or worked at the CPS. And so they allowed me to go straight in to do the conversion course, so the GDL at BPP University in London. Once I did the GDL, I did the bar straight from there, part-time, both of them part-time, because I was working and raising the kids at the same time. And I was called to the bar in 2018. So despite being from the wrong class to be a barrister, I made it. And I actually scored the second highest grade across the 2018 entire cohort for the country. So I guess that was a bit of a things up to the people who said I wouldn't make it. Despite that, getting pupillage was incredibly hard. I applied in the last year of the GDL and both years of the bar course. First year of the GDL, I got absolutely nothing, no response, nothing. Second year of the GDL, I got 2 interviews for first round and they didn't go well at all. I changed my entire form for third year. In the first 2 years, I'd removed myself from the form. I'd taken all of my background out and I'd simply put what I thought people wanted to hear. In the third year, I changed it and I was just me. And in the third year, I ended up with 26 first round interviews, 19 second round interviews, 9 offers and 3 reserved places. I took pupillage at 9 Bedford Row. I left after pupillage and I went to 2 Dr. Johnson's buildings where I found my home. And I've managed to form or forge a criminal practice. I do pure crime. And I've managed in the last couple of years to make it closer to home. So I practice in Kent and closely surrounding areas, central London, Woolwich, Guildford, that type of area. So that's me.
Thank you very much, Stacey, for that very inspiring background that you've shared with us. Please, could I now ask Mukhtiar to share, to answer the question?
Thank you. Yes, very inspiring, very inspired by my co-speaker's intro and what Stacey has said. I think one of the things I find very important to stress is that when we talk about diversity at the bar, we're talking about quality. We're talking about getting the very best people there. You can't get the best people if you just pick from a few. And so there are people hidden away outside the conventional routes who have real talent. And Stacey clearly has it. And it's a common theme I hear, and I love hearing people's stories, is you look at ability and then you look at the obstacles that people face. And you compare that with some of the privileges that some people face. That is a stark difference, but it shows that with determination, you will get there. But those obstacles are not in the way because you're not good enough. The obstacles are in the way because of structural reasons. Anyway, back to the question. And I do love talking about social mobility as you have introduced me, Neha, because, and I think one of the things we often miss when the bar talks of social mobility is career change. And I congratulate the aspiring barristers to have an event on career change, because without significant investment, people from working class backgrounds are just simply not going to be representative at the bar. But the other route is to change careers. And when I talk in schools, I always say, look, don't forget this talk in 10 years' time, in 15 years' time, when you might be able to have some money to actually get to the bar if you don't get around to it this time round. In terms of my background, well, Neha, you've kind of done most of that, haven't you, in the intro? maybe I'll start at 16. I was very troublesome at school, but despite that, and to the great annoyance of my teachers, I still did well at school, relatively. But I left school at 16, as did everyone else. I was the youngest of 5. Probably everyone I knew in my community, we all left school when we were 16. I only found out 10 years ago, when my kids were becoming teenagers, that you can't leave school at 16 anymore. You have to carry on doing education or doing an apprenticeship. But that's what I did. I joined the Inland Revenue, as it was then, now HMRC, for a couple of years. Missed playing sport, really, and thought I'd join the Royal Marines to try and get fit again. Thought that'd be a bit extreme and it wouldn't go down too well with my dad. So I compromised and joined the police cadets, which was quite a good laugh, quite good fun, got fit, even got paid a bit for it. But the thing is, you automatically became police officers. You did the police officer training. So it wasn't something I particularly wanted to do. Obviously not something I said in an interview, but just found myself in the police force at age 19 with no real qualifications, not really having a clue about life either, and being given power to make considerable decisions about people's lives, which in hindsight is absolutely frightening. And also in hindsight, frightening how little I was taught about the law. Now, which I'm sure my 3 co-speakers who all do criminal law would agree with in terms of knowledge of the law and the police. Well, so I served in the police for 23 years. I ended up as a detective inspector. I investigated all types of crime across the country, from serious organised crime, firearms, drugs offences, murder, homicide prevention, and rape, sexual offences. The lot. The only thing I didn't get involved with was terrorism. So I was quite fortunate to do that. And then I decided to think about what I want to do for a living. And I was about 35. So anyone who doesn't know what they want to do for a living when they're younger, have faith. It took me till I was 35 to realise that I wanted to become a barrister. And that was because I thought I would do a degree for a number of reasons, which I won't allude to because I know what the next question is going to be. But I did decide, I did my studies, as you said, part-time. And it took a little bit longer for me. I did the law degree over 4 years, the bar course over 2 years. I unfortunately suffered a medical condition whilst I was doing the bar course, which left me slightly disabled. So I had to take a year out. So it actually took 3 years for me to complete the bar course. And then I got pupillage at Six Pump Court, which was a common set. I did crime in my first year. But I didn't get pupillage until 3 years of trying. And that's my journey to the bar.
Thank you very much, Mukhtiar. Could I now ask Mark to share his background and journey to the bar?
Hi guys. Firstly, I was introduced by Neha as a commercial barrister, and someone in the inbox has shattered and killed my dreams because I've just found out that I'm actually a criminal barrister. So, you know, hopefully maybe one day when I'm bright and smart enough, I'll be able to go to the commercial bar and earn some real money. But nonetheless, yes, I am criminal barrister at Garden Court. I've been at Garden Court for 9 months now, and before that I was at Great James Street for 2 years, Total Call 3 years, and before that I was a solicitor for all of 5 months before I cross-qualified. But how I got into this story, this whole thing, so it from 3 months older, I was sadly physically abused and placed in foster care, and I grew up in a children's home, and that children's home closed down at 6 years old, where there was all other children. My parents didn't come back for me, and so they decided to adopt me. It was a very difficult, challenging time because it was a white family that ran the home. I had a torrid time in school. really there was no good memories from school, compounded by that I'm neurodiverse. So I've diagnosed with dyspraxia and I've got undiagnosed ADHD. So back then in the 80s when I went to school, there was no such support. They barely knew about dyslexia. So I ended up leaving school in 1991 with the grand old result of nothing. No GCSEs. In fact, I think I sat a maths exam and got an F for that, and no A levels because I didn't have any GCSEs. Messed around for a bit, got involved with the wrong crowd, and then I got into music, and then I decided to become a DJ in the early dance scene. Maybe a lot of you guys may be too young, but if your parents asked them about jungle or hardcore acid house, I was one of those guys playing in the warehouse parties. Went rather well. I ended up on a leading dance pirate radio station, Cool FM, carried on with that, got to DJ around the world, across the States, Canada, and extensively through Europe. And then after that, I ended up being chosen for BBC One Extra. At first, when I did a pilot show for them, they told me I was too old because I was 32 at the time. And then they came back 4 months later and said, you're absolutely the best person we've heard. And we offer you a contract. And I stayed with BBC for 3 years. And as Nihal rightly said, I still do work with them to this day. I've been of recent times outside of the music I've done with them. I've done the Victoria Derbyshire show. I've appeared on there. I've appeared on Joshua Rosenberg, KC's Law in Action show. And most recently, I appeared on How to Crack the Class Ceiling, which is kind of what we're all talking about today. And that was with Amal Rajan, and it was and that's still on BBC iPlayer now. But my legal career, well, unlike probably everyone else you'll hear tonight, I never wanted to become a lawyer. In fact, I didn't even want to study at all. I had no interest in further education, primarily because I had none in the first instance. And my claim to fame was I got into an altercation with someone back into 2013. I came out worse, but miraculously, or ironically rather, I ended up being charged with assault occasioning actual bodily harm. It went all the way to Woolwich Crown Court, and I had a trial. The day before the trial, a barrister who Mukhtiar probably knows well, but I will not reveal them. They were my barrister. They're excellent, top class, top draw barrister, but their trial overrun, so they couldn't do their trial. So I was kind of foolhardy, and I decided to represent myself in my own Crown Court trial. The late David Jenkins from 2 Kings Bench Walk was my prosecutor. And on day 2 of the trial, after I'd completely annihilated the complainant in the witness box, he took off his wig and put that on my head and said, you need to do this for a living. I got comments from Judge, and I can name it, Judge Robinson, who's now the resident judge in Norwich, that I did well. Unfortunately, the CPS, who I'm sure Stacey was working for at that time, didn't think I did so well. And I had a hung jury, and the CPS decided to go again. So I had to go do the trial all over again in November. This time, I kind of refined my advocacy, even though I wasn't qualified in anything. And I got a unanimous acquittal after 90 minutes, and then the police officer who actually arrested me gave me careers advice and told me to become an accredited police station representative. And the solicitor's firm, because bearing in mind I was my own barrister in my trial, but I still had a solicitor behind me doing litigation, and they actually agreed to take me on to be a trainee police rep. Now, I'm sure you're thinking you know this, you can't make this up. So I've done all of that, and I nearly went down the Silex route, but they couldn't support me because I ended up getting diagnosed with dyspraxia. I aced the exams for the police accreditation course at the first hit, and then I ended up being railroaded into doing an undergraduate, my undergraduate degree, Birkbeck, where I worked full-time as a project coordinator with the gangs prevention program in Waltham Forest. I got a training contract offer in my second year. Bearing in mind, I wanted to be a barrister. I told this solicitor's firm who was working with one of the young people I worked with my story. They took me out to dinner, made the offer, and everyone said I'd be mad if I don't take it because obtaining pupillage is so difficult. So I took it. I started training as a solicitor in 2018. I have to say, I hated every minute of it. I'm not someone that can work in an office. Litigation simply is not for me, and I'm a natural advocate. And when I really did shine is when I did what was known back then as doing your seats, where you have to go to another firm and do a kind of secondment. And my supervisor there was a barrister who started his own firm. He took me under his wing, gave me advocacy training, and sent me to do my own hearing on the ultimate day with him at the family court. And from then I knew I wanted to be a barrister. I left my training contract early. I became a freelance police representative for a few months, and COVID struck. Because I was on the police rep WhatsApp groups, I cleaned up with all the work going to police stations. I finished my LPC, passed it all, but got admitted to the role, and then I just started as a freelance consultant. At the time, everyone said it can't be done. You need to work in a firm. Didn't listen. And then within 2 weeks of being a freelance consultant, I was doing my own trials in the magistrate court, bearing in mind the Crown Court was shut down. I did 80 court cases appearances between June the 1st, 2020 until September, when I applied to transfer to the bar. I'd also met my chambers Great James Street at that time because I was very naughty and gate crashed their 50th year party after I intercepted an email to my old firm, which wasn't even meant for me. And I shared the same story I share with you. They found me fascinating. They took me out for lunch, and then they helped me transfer. And my old head of chambers wrote to the BSB and said I had the prerequisite advocacy experience. I did my higher rights as a solicitor, and then and I only had that for a week before I was called to the bar. But kind of long story short, in October of 2020, the BSB approved my application, and I was called to the bar on the 30th of November 2020. And so, as I understand it, I have done it in record time from transfer as a solicitor straight through to the bar. And I say I was exempted from pupillage. I didn't need to do a pupillage. No bar transfer test, absolutely nothing. It was just straight one to the other. I was called to the bar in Great James Street as a full tenant the next day. And then the journey just got better. I developed a Crown Court practice within 3 months, where I more or less completely removed myself out of the magistrate's court with a solid diary. And then I was headhunted by a few other chambers down the road, and then Garden Court came along, and I'd love to know what they see in me, but they decided to put me through as an exceptional candidate for something that's meant for people of 7 to 10 years cool, and I managed to do that at 2 years cool, and that was never done before in the history of Garden Court, and I've been happily there, and I call it my home ever since. So that is my story.
Thank you very much, Mark, for sharing your incredible journey. My apologies again for the mistake. Mark is indeed, as you may have gathered, a criminal barrister. Thank you for the attendee who pointed it out. Last but not least, could I ask David to please share his journey and background?
Thank you. Yes, well, I'm the youngest, I think, of the members this evening, and my journey to the bar is the shortest, I think, and probably also the least inspiring. But I'll set it out nonetheless. So I went to uni to do an English degree. No idea of doing law at that point, but my parents had left school with 3 GCSEs between them, so getting to university was enough. Didn't really matter what for. So I went to do English because that was what I was good at school, and spent the first 2 years not really thinking about careers, just sort of enjoying being there. And then third year came along, and I thought, all right, I'm going to need a job. I went to a careers fair in my first term of third year, and there was a Teach First stall there, and I thought, yeah, this sounds good. It's an opportunity to give something back, and I was sort of a bit adrift, I suppose, at that point. So I signed up. Did the training over the summer after my third year after graduation, and then started that following September teaching English at a secondary school on the outskirts of Birmingham. That was having done just a few weeks of teacher training. And for any of you who know how Teach First works, it's something of a sort of a baptism of fire. So I had 5 classes that were my classes, and it was a school that what was about to, I didn't know it then, but it was about to go into special measures. So very kind of light on the structure side of things. We were more or less sort of left to get on with it, given a broad outline of what the curriculum was and what was going to be on the exam, and then off you go and teach. So a lot of winging it, which turned out to be quite helpful, but equally quite a lot of stress as well. So I was doing that, and towards the end of my first year doing that, I began to consider other things. A number of factors. Firstly, honestly, it was a lot of hard work, and I panicked. Also, I was 21. Most of the people around me had been teachers their whole careers, and no intention of doing anything else. And I thought, actually, retirement is a long way off. Have I really thought about this? Is this what I really want to do for the rest of my life? And so, and the other thing I thought was, had I just sort of chosen the path of least resistance and kind of drifted into it, and I also had some health issues at the time that made me wonder whether I could carry on sort of classroom teaching. So I thought, well, actually, going back to the drawing board, what is it that I might be good at? What is it that I want to do? What is it that I could do? So I took a punt and applied for the law conversion course at City. I then finished my Teach First programme, so I had another year's teaching, by which point I was actually quite enjoying teaching, but I then went off to do the GDL. And at that point, again, still no clear idea I wanted to be a barrister, still no clear idea what area of law I was interested in. So tried various things. The school exclusion project was sort of the thing most linked to what I've been doing, sort of helping kids resist exclusions. And I'd seen firsthand sort of how rushed they often were, and how that was often the option of first resort in a lot of schools. So I enjoyed fighting those decisions and really sort of probing them in front of exclusion panels. Tried a bit of employment, sort of did a bit of volunteering in the family court. But when I got onto the bar course, I found that sort of the criminal people were my people. It seemed to me to be the area of law with sort of the best sense of humour and perhaps more of that spirit of kind of finding a way and winging it and not following that set path. So I thought, well, okay, this is what I want to go into. Apply for pupillage. Was fortunate to get it that year, and then had a year to fill before pupillage started. So having asked Chambers, what is it that I should be doing, and expecting they would say, well, go and be a paralegal, work at a criminal solicitor's firm. They actually said, well, what we liked about you was your classroom experience and the links that has to advocacy. So do what you like, but keep doing advocacy. So I went back and did a year's teaching, or in reality about 8 months teaching, because of course the lockdown hit and then it all got very strange, and there were a lot of calls like this with some 2 or 3 students on. And now I've taken tenancy at 187 Chambers, and I practice pretty much exclusively in crime, although doing a bit of medical regulatory work now as well, to sort of keep alive that tendency to sort of push at the edges and drift a bit into trying other things. But yeah, that's my journey. Shorter, less inspiring, but hopefully of some use.
Thank you, David. That was certainly inspiring to all the attendees, I'm sure. Thanks again, everyone, for sharing your personal journeys and experience. Although some of you may have covered my next question, which is, what was it about the bar that made you want to pursue it, given your established professional careers in a different field? Please, could I now start with Mark?
Thank you. So what was it about the bar? Well, I suppose I had real life experience representing myself in Crown Court. It was a skill set clearly I didn't know I had. And yeah, I mean, I like to talk with my neurodiverse condition. I'm amongst the top verbal reasoning persons in the country compared to maybe a Slav reading speed. So the skill set was there, and also I think that for me, it's the lifestyle of of a barrister. Let me be very clear. If you come to the criminal bar, you need to be of a certain disposition to practice. It's a very can be a very erratic, strange place to work, last minute things, traveling, all of which I absolutely love. As a DJ, I played around the country. I was self-employed. I had an agent. Now I'm a barrister. I do cases around the country. I'm self-employed, and I have a clerk instead of an agent. It's exactly the same thing. So I kind of had those skills and everything all along, and so for me, I think it fits like a glove. And I'll be honest, I couldn't really imagine myself doing anything else, or if I did, I'd still be a barrister, and this will be central to what I do.
Thank you, Mark. Please, could I now ask Mukhtiar to answer? Thank you.
Thank you. There was a number of reasons, really. I discovered in my career at the bar that the more ambitious I became, the less secure I felt within the profession. And so I didn't think it was a job for life, as I may have thought at some stage. We were thinking of starting a family, and I thought it would be a good idea to do a degree. A colleague of mine brought in a law book and said, why don't you think about this? And it was a revision book on admin law, and I read it and was fascinated by it, and I instantly fell in love with the law. As corny as that sounds, I liked the way that there was not always, in fact rarely, a right answer to questions, and the scope then to be able to argue things your way, I thought would be quite good fun. I also thought I'd be quite good at it. Don't to say that in a big-headed way, but I very much like skills-based things that you can analyze and look to improve on a daily basis, and in particular the advocacy side of that. So I like the idea of things being skills-based. I'm also quite an independent person, and I thought the independence would fit in well with my personality. I also like the idea of having responsibility for speaking on behalf of someone and serving someone. So that was something else that attracted me to the bar. A few other motivating factors. I once went on a leadership course on with the police, and we had one of these so-called mentors, and her takeaway advice to me when I told her I was thinking of changing career was that I should set my sights a bit lower and become a solicitor, which helped motivating me more to go to the bar. I'm in an iron as to whether to complete my service and then look for a career at the bar, or whether to just make a complete break. That decision got made for me. As I alluded to, I had a health condition, and I ended up being pensioned out of the police. So they were my main motivating factors.
Thank you, Mukhtiar. Please, could I now ask David to answer the question? Thank you.
Yes, so I think having sort of embarked on teaching, I think saying I was established and then reconsidered would be a bit of a stretch, but certainly having embarked in it, it felt like it was a very, very hands-on job. But I wondered if I was done with the sort of the academic challenge. I sort of coasted a bit in my degree and thought, well, actually, maybe now I'm a little bit older. I kind of want to get stuck into something, and law seemed to to offer that. I'd echo as well what Mukhtiar said about that that sort of opportunity to speak on behalf of other people. I found that, in fact, probably one of the reasons I'd not considered the bar in the first place was that I'm not the most sort of confident person in arguing my own corner or my own cause. But I found that when it came to trying to get something for someone else, that was a much easier, much more enjoyable exercise. That sort of self-consciousness about, well, you know, am I right to be asking for this? Am I pushing too much? Am I asking the right way? All of that went out the window. It was something that somebody else needed or wanted, and all I had to focus on was doing everything I could to get that. So I found it was quite an empowering exercise. And classroom teaching had given me a lot more confidence as well. I look back and I sort of I'm amazed that I signed up. I'm not sure I really appreciated when I did sign up to sort of be the adult stood at the front of a class of disruptive teenagers. But having done that and not completely sort of gone down in flames, I thought, well, maybe there are other things that I've sort of written off that I shouldn't have written off. And the bar seemed the obvious other sort of talking-based career that had the opportunity to sort of to make a difference and to sort of broaden my horizon. So that for me was what was the attraction of the bar.
Thank you, David. Lastly, could I ask Stacey to answer the question, please?
My answer is probably far more simple. At the age of 14, I knew I wanted to be a criminal barrister. I had a personal, up-close, I wouldn't quite know how to put it actually, but I had an incident that occurred in my own personal life without going into it too much. It made me question the way that victims are treated and the way the police investigate things and how certain members of certain communities are allowed to do basically what they want. And I decided that I wanted to be the voice of people who are otherwise unheard. And I wanted to make sure that for those people, they get justice. I mean, that's a funny thing because initially I always thought that I would only prosecute, but I actually love defending. So it's very odd how it worked out. Although I always wanted to be a barrister, once you actually start in a career like I did at the CPS and settle into your life and you've got kids and everything else, people would say to me, oh, but you're at an age now, because I'm not particularly young, you're at an age now where you should be starting to settle, you don't need to uproot your career, etc., etc. In 2013, or before then actually, when I was 32, I had a medical operation which left me unable to extend my family. And I thought, I'm a mom, I've got a job, I'm fine, I'm happy with my lot. When my ability to have children vanished, I wondered what I was actually going to do with my life. And my kids obviously were getting older. And I kind of thought, I'm gonna hit 40 and be left with a job at the CPS and that's it. And so that is what made me eventually decide to go back to do what I always wanted to do and qualify to be a barrister.
Thank you very much, Stacey. My next question in this first bit is up to all the panelists is, when you joined the bar as a junior, what were the challenges you faced whilst transitioning into becoming a barrister? Please could I ask David to begin? Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, so Mark has already said the criminal bar is quite, I think erratic is the word. Unlike him, I'd not had any experience of self-employment or going here, there and everywhere and really short notice briefs. So coming from the incredibly structured world of teaching, where you know exactly when your holidays are, you know what your hours are each day, you know who's going to be in front of you at what time, and in broad terms what you're going to be teaching them, to go from looking at my diary at 6 o'clock to find out, have I got a trial tomorrow, what town, what city is it in, how am I going to get there, what side am I on, all of that was quite an adjustment, an exciting adjustment. But I think that was the main thing. That and tax, which is less scary than I thought it was. But again, having been used to getting pay slips and knowing what I was earning, that was quite a plunge in the dark, and I still to this day remain convinced that I'm going to make some kind of awful tax boo-boo. But yeah, it's simpler than I thought it was. But that lack of structure and tax.
Thank you, David. Please could I ask Stacey to share her experience? Thank you.
Sorry, I completely missed the question because I was distracted by my child. Did you say what challenges we faced?
Yes, so challenges
you.
you faced. Yes,
Thank you. I have 4 really. Money is the first one. The big thing that nobody wants to talk about, but money was one of the biggest barriers that I faced. I didn't come from money at all, and so being older with a family, a house, financial commitments, not earning or earning very little as a pupil barrister, and not being paid because cases aren't paid until they finish, that was a real challenge. Being called to the bar in 2018, I got on my feet in 2019 and didn't really get a chance to get started before COVID hit. I also didn't have a 2018-19 tax return because I'd been employed as been a pupil. So you also get like set fee for pupil. So you aren't doing that whole thing with tax returns, etc., etc. But I hadn't been at the bar for a year. So no support whatsoever for the entire of COVID. My husband's self-employed, so no financial support. We did the entire of COVID with nothing. So finances at the criminal bar are an issue for new barristers, but if you know, you can prepare. And I would suggest that anyone wanting to go to the bar tries to prepare as best they can for that, because it is tough at the bottom end, but it doesn't stay that way. The second was academics. I don't consider myself to be a particularly academic person. I know that a lot of people who hear me say that absolutely do not agree with me, but I'm not naturally academic. I work incredibly hard. I will be the person up till 3-4 in the morning when everybody else is fast asleep, because I don't think I quite understand point of law, when in actual fact I do. I just don't have much. I am my own worst enemy, and I question myself too much. Lots of people do that. I suppose they do call it imposter syndrome, don't they? It's very real and everybody gets it. Doesn't matter how long you've been at the bar. The bar course doesn't prepare you for practice. And so a career at the bar, applying the law, the way in which you have to approach the judges, how you approach your opponents, knowing the best thing to do for the person that you're representing, it's hard. The bar course does not prepare you for it. And so that was a challenge. The third one is work-life balance. Trying to be a good barrister, dedicate the time required to that, trying to be a good mum, trying to be a good wife, which is probably the last thing on the list, I have to admit, and I'm sure my husband would agree. That is a struggle. It's a real struggle. I can't say it necessarily actually gets easier. Maybe it will once I've been here 10 years or so. But what I can say is that I love my job, and with the support of your family, you can make the career work for you. And lastly is diversity. And I suppose that's one of the reasons why I'm here. It's a big one. The way people looked at me, the comments they made, I've been called a pikey, I've been told I need to take elocution lessons, on and on and on, and I still get it now. My non-traditional background means that I've faced major adversity in coming to the bar. For instance, a lot of people looked at me, tell me that I don't belong, or speak down to me. I had someone tell me I needed to go back to effing law school, that my opinions were useless, all sorts of things. And I'm sure you've all heard of Alexandra Wilson and her story about being mistaken for being a defendant at court. Well, I'm sure she's not the only one. I know she's not the only one. In fact, a couple of weeks ago at the Old Bailey, I was registering defence witnesses to come into the court, because you have to register them on the security and with the security team. And they questioned me as to whether or not I was a barrister. I was in a suit, but apparently I didn't look like one. I didn't speak like one either. So diversity, I know it's something that the bar are working on, but it's something that still needs some serious work. And it was a big challenge.
Thank you, Stacey, for sharing your experience and also the advice that you have to share for attendees. Please could I ask Mukhtiar to share the challenges that he's faced. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, a lot of these overlap with what previous speakers have said. First one I've made a note of was myself, my confidence. So thinking you're not only good enough to compete and compete well against your opponent, but generally the bar did seem very much a different planet to what I saw as the real world, and linked to that, I would say the feeling of invisibility. Not only feeling invisibility, but then as you go on, the years go on, proof of invisibility. Another challenge I found, I found it, even though I've only got a mild disability, I found that a particular barrier, and I wasn't particularly confident having to declare that, and that's still somewhat an issue. I think another issue I found was that I don't drink, I'm not a great socializer, and I find this is still an issue. People are expected to socialize at the bar, particularly to meet clients, and I find that difficult because every social event seems to be around alcohol, and also I kind of feel, even though I'm relatively junior at the bar, that people my level of call are a lot younger, so you do feel a little bit out of place. But I just want to emphasize what Stacey says in terms of discrimination. There is a lot. There is a lot. And I think one of the things that the tribunal has, the employment tribunal has emphasized, and perhaps other jurisdictions where hearings take place in a particular way remotely, is that when you're in the waiting area, you can sometimes see what the clerk or whoever, how they introduce people, and because generally, if you say you've experienced discrimination, a lot of people, natural reaction is to question that whether you did, and look to justify the person who's discriminated against you or you feel has done so. But the thing with Zoom is that you can be on multiple screens like this, and you can have a clerk. So I have to have a support worker with me often, so I will have someone visibly a lot younger assisting me, and they're almost invariably the person who the clerk thinks is the barrister representing, invariably. And then the beauty of that, and in a way, I love this discrimination. Right? I love it coming out. I can handle it, right? I can handle it. I don't feel any kind of tie to the bar. I will take it on when it happens. What I like about it is when other people can see it and see that it happens, particularly in the tribunal, where it's very difficult to win discrimination cases anyway, and probably half the judges probably think that discrimination doesn't even exist, or not to the extent that claimants do. So yes, so they're kind of my main barriers.
Thank you, Mukhtiar, for sharing your experience and also sort of reiterating other points made by the guest panelists. I will now move on to the second segment of the evening, which is individual questions that I will pose to our guest speakers. My first one being to Stacey. Given your 17-year-long career in the CPS, how would you say your perspective as a criminal barrister differs from others in the field?
I think that my life experience, rather than my 17-year career in the CPS, a bit of both actually. So firstly, I think my life experience gives me a different perspective to other people at the bar, because I can actually put myself in the shoes of those that I defend, and I understand where they are and their life experience. And a lot of clients tell me that's what they like about me. I'm not judgmental, and I'm not posh, and I don't come across like that either. The CPS, I mean, that really gave me the experience and the understanding of the way in which the job works. And I think that was a huge benefit. This is a job where you learn on your feet. And having watched people do it and having practiced in the magistrates court for years as an associate prosecutor, that type of experience I found was invaluable. As I said earlier, bar school doesn't really prepare you for the slightest of the practicalities of the job, how things are done in court, how to be a good advocate, how to prepare for trial, any really of that. So my experience at the CPS meant that I came to the bar already understanding the practical side of the job and those various elements. I often watch new barristers struggle with not only their self-confidence, because we all do, but with understanding exactly what it is that they're supposed to be doing, because it's very different to your advocacy lessons at university, being in a courtroom, the pressure you feel, the uncertainty, not knowing exactly how to address something. It's one of the reasons why I do these events, but it's also one of the reasons why I check in with barristers when I'm at court. So if I ever see people around who look unsure or look new or look young or look like they just don't quite feel like they fit, I check in with them. I make sure they're okay. I ask if they need help. And I'm always there for a lot of junior barristers to come to me, and they do come to me. Even some more senior barristers come to me to ask things. I don't promise to have all the answers, but sometimes just feeling supported is enough to give someone confidence to do what actually they probably knew was right in the first place. It's someone to bounce ideas off, someone to tell you to breathe, to let them know that they've got it. You know, they got here just as much as I did. They have the qualifications just the same as I do, just the same as the KC does as well, that you might meet in the corridor. You're not any less any less educated than them. And so, you know, that bears repeating several times. Another huge bonus was that I understood the process within the CPS for the reviewing lawyers. So the process that they go through when deciding if they should charge a case, deciding whether to accept a basis of plea, deciding what pleas might be acceptable, that sort of working understanding of CPS policies and how they're applied is amazingly helpful as a barrister, particularly when I'm defending, because I know how to approach a case and what the CPS, particularly Kent CPS people that I've worked with for years, knowing whether or not they're likely to accept something and how to play to that is incredibly beneficial.
Thank you very much, Stacey. My next question is to Mukhtiar. How did you find the transition from working in the public sector under full-time employment for 25 years in comparison to working as a self-employed barrister at Chambers?
Thanks. I was quite fortunate that I managed to get a secondment to what was a serious organised crime agency whilst I was doing my law degree, or I think I was in year 2 or year 3. And I asked for a 1-week placement in the employment and commercial team in-house, and I ended up there for 3 years. And that kind of started to feel a bit like a 9-to-5 type job, which I'd not really experienced before, and working mainly in the field of law. So that helped with the transition. But when I started pupillage, I found that I would say it's my easiest year of working life, which is probably the opposite of what many people will say, because I've had to just juggle so many different things leading up to that point. And then at pupillage, I could just think about pupillage. I could just think about one thing. So I would say that in terms of working hours and unpredictability, the bar is probably less unpredictable than work that I've done before. Probably hours is slightly less than I used to work before. I mean, I could work longer hours if I wanted to, but I'm not particularly greedy. And you know, if you have barristers who do private work and say they're very busy, they haven't got much time. Just bear in mind that we are self-employed and we can control our diaries. There can be consequences of asking for time off, etc. But it's still you that makes the ultimate choice. And I say that in terms of private work, because those who are doing legal aid work have a whole different set of circumstances. That, you know, their practice is very much backs against the wall, and much more difficulty in terms of financial pressures, amongst others. I also enjoyed the independence of it, and being able to say what you think and be responsible for your own outcomes, really. I also liked the idea of I loved being in court, in particular, being against people who are from what I might say better off backgrounds than me, who may well have looked down their nose at me previously. None of that counts when you're in court. Well, it doesn't really. It doesn't generally. So there's. I would draw an analogy to boxing. I used to do a bit of boxing when I was younger. It doesn't matter how good you think you are. At the end of the day, you're just going to be fighting someone. Similarly in the courtroom, you know, it's you have a degree of control, and people aren't good just because they say they're good. They have to be good. I find also at the bar, in terms of transition, obviously one of the big differences is money. Where before I had a salary and knew how to budget things, the bar, particularly initially when I did more legal aid work, it is unpredictable, and your earnings are unpredictable. That remains the case. I do mainly predominantly employment work, but I might do a case where it's not going. I might be working on it for 2-3 years, and I don't get paid for it until that case is over. But yeah, so broadly, I found the transition very good. I found that my life experience, as Stacey said, as well as work experience, to be invaluable. I found confidence in dealing with people, and I saw others with having real difficulty having confidence in speaking with people. I mean, let's face it, a lot of barristers are a bit socially awkward. Not in all practice areas, but you know, I come across barristers, and I'm pretty sure I'm the first person they spoke to who looks like me. I see people that barristers who don't sit next to their clients, and there's that awkwardness between them. But I feel more confident in dealing with people, having been a career changer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mukhtiar. My next question is to Mark. How would you say, what would you say led to you to decide to become a barrister as opposed to gaining higher rights as a solicitor advocate?
Right, simply put, I did gain my higher rights as a solicitor advocate, but transferred. Now, the thing is that I probably could have trundled along as a consultant solicitor, taking work from various solicitors firms and operating like a barrister, but not being a barrister. But what I noticed is that my diary management was poor, and being neurodiverse as well, not using it as an excuse, but one often has problems with organizational skills, and also the billing was a pain for me as well. So rather than attempt to do all these things myself, far better to go into a chambers and for a percentage of my earnings, someone else does it all for me. So it was more out of pragmatism, I thought why I'd become a barrister. And again, the only way remaining a solicitor would have actually worked for me is consultant. I started my academic studies at 40 years old. That was like 8 years ago. The only way I can't, what I've realized, I can't work for no one. I'm very pig-headed and stubborn for my sins, and I have to be my own man. I have to be my own boss. And so working in a law firm, I would have been sacked by now. It's just not who I am as a person. And what I noticed with solicitor advocates that are in-house, they have to do the litigation. They're expected to do duty court rotas. They're expected to meet clients, go to prisons, go to police stations in the middle of the night, and still go to Crown Court as well and do the odd Crown Court trial and all the PTPHs and the hearings they're expected to do, all of that. As a barrister, all I have to do is worry about the law and go and do my advocacy. That's it. And so for me, it was just a pragmatic solution to how I would develop. And so, yeah, night and day, each to their own. But as I've said, I can't. Right now in life, I'm probably the happiest I've ever been professionally, and I probably enjoy this more than I ever did being a professional DJ who played around the world with celebrities. And I don't say that lightly.
Thank you, Mark. My next question is to David. Given your experience working as a teacher, how would you compare interacting with pupils in comparison to a courtroom? Thank you.
So it's actually quite similar, I would say, but I think obviously when I was applying initially for pupillage, a lot of the interest I got was in that sort of the part of teaching you think of most, the sort of the classroom interactions with pupils. But as a job, there's a lot more to it, and actually I think a lot of those parts of the job, those other parts of the job, really kind of map quite nicely onto my reality day to day now. There's always before a lesson or before a case preparation, getting on top of something, not only for yourself but thinking, well, how do I get on top of this in a way that I can interpret it and present it to a number of different audiences, depending on whether it's a legal argument or points you might make to a jury, or whether it's an explanation to a client of what's going to happen, or what the process is. The interactions with pupils were hugely helpful in preparing me for what I do now, in a number of ways. I think first and foremost, what I would say on the back of what's been said already, I've had a relatively sheltered, relatively privileged life. I've not had a great deal of life experience to draw on. It turns out that there were members of my family who were sort of closer to the criminal justice system than I kind of realised. But I think ironically that kind of came out since I've been doing this job. But so meeting pupils at both the schools I worked at, who were in lots of different ways amongst the most sort of vulnerable in not just the areas they were, but sort of nationally, and being presented with what was going on in their lives, and trying to help them through that as well. That was quite a sort of a shock and an eye-opener, and very, very instructional and informative and really helpful. And I think particularly at the criminal bar, most days I will be having conversations with people I've never met before, about the things that are most personal and most difficult and most sensitive or embarrassing in their lives. And they might be telling me those things because it's relevant to mitigation, or because it explains what was happening in an incident. And there's a huge importance of trust, and and being able to listen, but also to respond in a way that inspires confidence, and that they know that I can help them to get what it is that they need. So teaching gave me a way into that. Also the conflicts, the sort of the difficult classroom situations, the fights, the breakdowns, the fire alarms, all of that prepares you quite well for the chaos, particularly going into the magistrates' court as a second six pupil. The magistrates' court is an absolute mess, and quite a lot like some of the classrooms I've been in. So yeah, there was a lot of overlap, and I felt it was quite a natural transition, fortunately.
Thank you, David. We're now moving to the third part of the event. I'm aware of the time, but just a couple more questions to go before we move to the Q&A segment. My next question is to Mark. Any word of advice or caution to those who may share a similar background and are interested in becoming a barrister?
Probably echoing a lot what Stacey and Mukhtiar have said. I mean, you know, one thing with me, I've never let anyone made me feel less than them. I don't really care if you're Oxbridge educated or what class you come from. Everyone who knows me, I'm a Cockney black geezer from Forest Gate, East London. I'm unapologetic about it. I speak the way I speak. I use slang. If you know me well enough, I'll even at the bar, I'll greet you with "all right, mate" and "hello, mate," and that's how I am. And be your authentic self. You know, the biggest thing, and I think the reason that I've been as successful as I have done and so quickly is because I've remained my authentic self. And it stood, and it's put me in good stead. I mean, unlike some of the stories what Stacey and Mukhtiar have shared, I'll go as far as to say that I don't think I've even faced any discrimination at the bar. Maybe it's because I'm 6'1" and quite a big guy that people probably prefer to say it behind my back than to my face. But nonetheless, I keep it real. I even did a closing speech in street slang at Snaresbrook Crown Court and got my client acquitted. So be yourself. Because if you're not yourself, you will get found out. As we like to say in East London, you'll get owned, and you don't want that. Again, please, if anything you guys take from this evening is what Stacey has said earlier. She did 2 rounds of applying in 2 years where she didn't get nowhere, removing her story. The moment she was her authentic self, she got, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stacey, was it 26 first round interviews and 9 offers?
Yeah, 9 offers and 3 reserved places.
3 reserved places. That is bloody amazing. And all she did was be herself. Please, all of this, you know, posh barrister BS needs to stop, and especially if you come to the criminal bar, because, you know, there are a lot of upper middle class barristers at the criminal bar. I've heard people reciting Shakespeare, and honestly, it doesn't go down well with the jurors. Remember, as a juror, you are selected from your local area. The chances are that you're not going to have high academic achievements like the certain barristers. You're normal men and women from the local community that have come to hear a case. You're not going to be interested in Shakespeare or all this posh poncy kind of stuff that some barristers go on about. So best advice, be yourself, keep it real, embrace yourself, and you will find the chambers that's right for you. And hopefully you'll come across people like me, Stacey, and Mukhtiar and David, and we will embrace you. There you go.
Thank you very much, Mark. Much appreciated. My next question is to Mukhtiar. Is there anything you would have done differently to reach your current stage as a barrister? If circumstances had been different, would you have considered the traditional pathway into becoming a barrister? Thank you.
No, and no.
Thank you very much, Mukhtiar. My last question is to both David and Stacey. Any final piece of advice for students that are applying but facing setbacks and rejections in securing a pupillage? Could we please start with Stacey? Thank you.
I am on the pupillage committee for 2 Dr. Johnson's buildings, and one of the things I find very difficult is the competency-based questions. There is a format to answering them. Please use STAR, situation, task, the action that you took, and the result, the outcome, what you learned from it. Okay, once you master that, then your applications will be great. It's awful. I hate doing it. You have to do it for CPS grading. You have to do it if you want to be a judge. All of these things are competency-based questions, and it's one of the places where I find people struggle with the most. I recently did one of these type of seminars where James Harrison at Six Pump Court and myself both presented how to properly answer a STAR question. I've got the document which we created for that. If people want it, I'm happy to share. I'm on LinkedIn, give me a shout, I'll send it over. But definitely that's the first thing. Make sure you use the proper format. If you don't, your application will be thrown on the rubbish pile. That's it. We're busy people. We don't have the time to look at application forms which go on and on and on and on and on. We look at hundreds of them. Okay, so use STAR, keep it succinct. Think about where you're applying to. Think carefully. Don't think about, oh, that's an amazing set. I should go there. I applied to one set thinking, oh, I'm going to apply there because they're a bit above me. I probably won't get in, but I'm going to give it a go. They came back to me and said to me, you don't have enough life experience. I was like, I'm 35 years old. I've got 2 children. I have an entire wealth of life experience. I don't know what you're talking about. But what they meant is I hadn't been to Rwanda and tried to save the children. Well, how many of us have? Not very many, I imagine. So yeah, think about where you're applying to. You want to go where you are going to fit. Don't waste your time in applying to places where you won't fit. If you look on their website and they don't look like they're your type of person, don't bother, you'll be unhappy. The last thing that I would say is, well, a couple of things. Surround yourself with a good support system. Apply for scholarships. There are so many out there, and you might think that you won't get them. I didn't think I would get them, and I got 4, I think. So apply for them, and then be kind to yourself is the last thing. This is hard going. You deserve to be here. You passed. You got to where we all are. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it, and have a little bit of faith.
Thank you
David?
very much.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, I mean, off the back of that last point, really, this is a career changes event. Everyone listening to this will have already been really good at something else, whatever that might be, and that is just one of many reasons to believe that you can be really good at this. Sometimes you might directly meet people who challenge that, but a lot of it's internal. A lot of it is doubting whether you can do it, and the answer is you probably can. What I would say, and again relevant to a career changes event, one of the things that almost put me off applying was that the people I'd come across were people who'd always wanted from day dot to be a barrister, that they'd had an idea of what it was, and they knew from the beginning that that's what they wanted to do. There are lots of people like that. They make great barristers. There are people who something out of the blue sets them off on this path, and there are people who give it a lot of thought and eventually think, well, I'll take a punt at it. That doesn't matter. But you shouldn't be scared of applying or pursuing this career just because it wasn't the first thing you thought of, or something you've always wanted to do throughout your life. Actually, the fact that you've been somewhere else and done something else might give you a whole range of advantages that you shouldn't be afraid of selling when you apply to transition to the bar. And good luck with it. There are a lot of people, most people I'd say I've met who really, really enjoy it. So remember that as well.
Thank you, David. Sorry, Mukhtiar, did you have? I noticed that
Two things. One, keep things in perspective. That helped me my third year. I'd lost my father that year, and to be honest, I didn't really care. It made me think, does it really matter whether I become a barrister or not? And I performed so much better in interview because before I used to get too nervous. So keep perspective. Second, try and seek out feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Mukhtiar. So this comes, all my questions have now been answered kindly by all the guest speakers. Thank you very much again. And also thank you for the attendees for patiently waiting for the Q&A segment. I've received a series of questions via the chat box, and I'll now be reading some of them out to you. The question that I've received is, to all the panelists, did your upbringing make you feel that you were not worthy or would be prevented from becoming a barrister? It's open to all the guest speakers. If anyone would like to go first.
I think yes. I never thought that I would ever be able to be a barrister. Barristers were posh, rich, incredibly well educated, Oxford, Cambridge people. That's how I thought they were. And some of them are, but not all of them, and increasingly not as many as you think. And so I thought that there was absolutely no way that I could become a barrister, and I was wrong.
Thank you, Stacey.
Yeah, I'll jump in off the back of that. You know, and it's going to sound weird. I suffered so much being put down in the music industry, and I'll go as far as to say discrimination and racism in the music industry, in the urban music industry, that you wouldn't believe. That everything just probably bounces off me as a barrister. So I come to it, and I don't, as I said, I don't feel any less than anyone else. I just have this attitude, I can do attitude, and I've maintained that ever since I started at Great James Street from day one on the 1st of December 2020. I maintained that same attitude, because all the worst in life, and I've had so much negative experiences from being put in care at a young age and how people treated me in school. You know, I've been through so much in life, it literally couldn't get any worse. So I just turned it around, and I don't accept anything less from myself. You know, I demand respect from my peers. I've had your prosecutor, because I kind of strictly defend now, tried to be a bit rude, and I feel no way to put them in their place. You know, you will respect me, and I don't care. You can be Eton, Oxbridge, and the rest of it. I'm not going to have it from you. And I have that kind of air of confidence about me, and you need to have that. One, it's great for self-preservation, but two, your clients will love you if they see that you're confident in what you do. So that's my 2 pennies worth on that.
Thank you, Mark. Do any of the other guest speakers, David and Mukhtiar, have anything else to add?
I think similar to Mark, really, that I don't think it's a barrier. I mean, I think it's a strength. But in terms of whether we're welcome or not, I think it depends where you apply and who you ask.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd say the same. It's already been said. It makes a difference where you apply, but that was why I applied to 187. I'd had some unfriendly interviews in other places. I went into interview with them, and we had a laugh. And I thought, okay, these people have got perspective and they're understanding, and they're not looking for someone who's playing a part. So you'll find the right place for you.
Thank you, David. Thank you for everyone asking questions in the chat box. In terms of the time, we may not be able to go through all the questions, but we will make sure to ask some of the ones. I've got another question specifically directed to Mark. What would you advise a recently graduated LLB student who's considering taking the bar? For context, the person has said that they've always wanted to become a solicitor, but have had recent encounters which are pushing them towards studying the bar and becoming a barrister. So they're struggling to make a decision, and they would be really grateful for any advice regarding the same. Thank you.
All right, so look, I said about keeping it real, and I'm gonna be true to that. Is like it is so bloody hard to get a pupillage. You know, all us four that you see today. I mean, I didn't get a pupillage, I was exempted from it, but you know, Mukhtiar, Stacey, and David, it is so hard. I meet so much bar students who just are unable to secure pupillage, and it absolutely breaks my heart. In terms of solicitors, especially if you want to be a criminal defense solicitor, put it this way: I've got 4 of my friends or my friends' children training contracts just because I know the partner in a firm. I've got at least 7 people paralegal positions just because as a barrister I can contact people and walk them into a job. Remember, the high street firm, where your criminal defense firms are found, is on the high street. They're always looking. There is actually a low in criminal defense solicitor numbers where if it carries on the way it is, there's hardly going to be any criminal defense firms in about 10 years' time. And the average age of a criminal defense solicitor is 40. And so, again, whether you're family law, immigration, as a solicitor, and even if you go in as a paralegal, you can work your way to a training contract. And to the SRA's credit, it's been made even easier. You don't even need a training contract anymore to be a solicitor. You can just do it with experience. And my friend, who I got a job at, just to be an accredited police station rep, and my friend who was a partner in the firm supervised her. She just got signed off just by being a police station representative. Signed off experience by the SRA, and all she needs to do is pass the SQE. The Solicitors Regulation Authority have made it so simple to become solicitors. Now, I know a lot of people, when it's solicitors, they want to run to Magic Circle firms and the city firms, which are inhabited by Oxbridge. But save for that, high street firms, which are all over the place, it's not that difficult, honestly. Whereas the bar is institutionally, it's as posh as it's ever been. No matter what they will tell you, it's still Oxbridge. I looked at the stats on Legal Cheek's site, and all the top 20 sets, you've got like up to 5 out of 5 new tenants are all Oxbridge educated. Tells you all you need to know. So we can come here in these events and tell you how great it is, but the reality is it's hard, and all the stars really need to align. Whereas a training contract, or you don't even need it anymore, is something achievable. And I just want to leave you this piece of advice and let that sink in, and how the elitist the barrister profession is. Solicitors, you get admitted to the role of solicitors twice a month. That's 24 times a year. To become a barrister, you can only be called to the bar 3 times a year. You don't need to do no 10, 12 dinners to become a solicitor. You just do your LPC or SQE, and then there you go. A barrister, you have to jump for all these hoops, so it's difficult. I'm not saying not to pursue it. It is a wonderful job, and if you think you're good enough, go for it. But the reality is that's what you're up against, and you are up against some of the smartest people Oxbridge in the country, and you know, whatever reason, a training contract came my way, I took it, and I was able to avoid the rat race, as it were, for pupillage. But I'm not saying give up, but it depends your financial situation and your own personal circumstances. But I'd say, you know, just be a barrister, go for it if you want to, but always have in your mind that if you're not successful, you can be a solicitor and then transfer when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was really helpful advice. I'm aware that we've gone past the scheduled time for the event. I've got 2 more questions to go. Are the guest speakers okay with that? Would it be all right to ask 2 more questions? Thank you very much. My next question is, do you regret changing careers to the bar? That is, do you miss your old career, professional background?
No.
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
I think the answer is very clear. Thank you very much. My next question being, did changing career to the bar from your old career go as you expected in terms of the transition?
I'm going to say no, and hopefully some of your attendees will start to learn the difference between open and and close questions, but no, is my answer.
Thank you, Mukhtiar. Do any of the other guest speakers have anything to add? No? Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you to the attendees who shared their questions as well. I think the event is coming to a close. Thank you to all our guest speakers for taking the time to share their journeys and experience working at the bar. So today's event has come to an end. We'd like to once again thank Mark, Mukhtiar, Stacey, and David for taking their precious time away from their commitments to share their experience. I'm sure all the attendees, including myself, have learned a lot from your invaluable sharings today. I would like to take this opportunity to also thank our participants. Thank you for joining us today and making this event a very successful one. I hope you all have a good evening, and we hope to see you all in future Aspiring Barristers events. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Neha, before you go, just invite everyone. We're all on social media. We're all of us are on LinkedIn. So do add us all on LinkedIn, and I'm sure that my learner friends will agree with me. We'll answer more of your questions on LinkedIn if we can. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I've tried to answer some of the chat boxes as well for everybody, but yeah.
Thank you very much, Stacey and Mark. We've also mentioned their respective LinkedIn profiles. We've included it in our post. So if that's easier, you could have all their profiles under one post if you check out our Aspiring Barristers post for this event. Thank you very much again, everyone. Truly appreciate all your help and advice that you've shared today. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks all. Bye.